Elemental Living by Joseph Kelly. Earth, stability and structure. The grounded center. Place your bare feet upon the soil for a moment. Feel its cool firmness against your soles, the subtle texture of stone and root, the profound solidity that has remained largely unchanged for millennia beneath the ceaseless dance of seasons. This is earth energy in its most elemental form, dependable, patient, enduring. As you stand in conscious connection with this ground beneath you, you connect not merely with soil and stone, but with the psychological quality that forms the foundation of all human flourishing. The capacity for stable presence amid life's constant flux. Earth represents our most fundamental psychological need, the requirement for sufficient stability, structure and security to develop and express our full potential. Without this grounded foundation, fire's passion disperses as uncontained energy, air's ideas remain disconnected from practical reality, and water's emotions overflow their banks without clear channels. Earth provides the container that makes all other elemental expressions possible. The vessel that holds the water, the hearth that contains the flame, the body that gives form to thought and feeling. In a culture that often celebrates constant innovation, dramatic transformation and continuous growth, Earth's quiet wisdom can seem unremarkable, even dull. We rarely celebrate those who maintain consistent routines, build slowly toward long-term goals, or prioritize stability over excitement. Yet without this grounding force, all other forms of development become fragile constructions built on shifting sand, vulnerable to collapse with each strong wind of circumstance. This chapter explores Earth as psychological energy, the stabilizing force that enables embodied presence, practical wisdom, and the patient persistence needed to manifest visions into tangible reality. We'll examine Earth's distinctive strengths and challenges, its manifestations in daily life, and practical approaches to cultivating healthy Earth energy according to your unique needs and circumstances. Through this exploration, you may discover that what appears most ordinary, the simple capacity to be fully present in your body, attending to practical realities with patient care, actually represents one of the most profound achievements of human development. The psychology of being grounded. Beneath the surface complexities of human psychology lies a fundamental quality that makes all other psychological development possible: the capacity for groundedness. This quality manifests through several interconnected dimensions that together create the psychological foundation upon which everything else is built. Embodied presence, the body as home. At its core, groundedness begins with the simple yet profound capacity to inhabit your physical being with conscious awareness, to experience yourself not as a mind somehow trapped in a body, but as a unified field of embodied consciousness where thinking, feeling, and sensing form an integrated whole. This embodied presence allows you to be fully here, in this moment and this place, rather than perpetually elsewhere in thought or emotion. Consider for a moment how often you might exist primarily in your head, analyzing past events, planning future activities, or engaging in abstract thinking disconnected from physical awareness. While these mental journeys serve important purposes, when they become habitual to the exclusion of bodily presence, you lose access to the rich information and deeper knowing that emerges only through embodied awareness. Your body continuously generates valuable data about your relationship with your environment and yourself. Signals of comfort or distress, subtle responses to situations before conscious recognition, instinctive knowings that precede rational understanding. When you maintain conscious connection with this embodied experience, you gain access to intelligence far beyond conceptual thinking alone. What philosopher Eugene Gunlin called the felt sense, that pre-verbal bodily knowing that contains implicit wisdom about your needs, boundaries, and authentic responses to life's circumstances. This embodied presence doesn't require perfect physical health or particular bodily capabilities, but simply the willingness to inhabit whatever body you have with attentive awareness, whether running marathons or navigating chronic pain, whether dancing with fluid grace or moving with the assistance of supportive devices, the essential quality remains the same. Being fully present within your physical experience rather than abstracted from it. Neuroscience increasingly confirms what contemplative traditions have long recognized, that consciousness emerges not from brain activity alone, but through the continuous interplay between brain, body, and environment. The extensive neural networks throughout your body, including the enteric nervous system, often called the gut brain, and the cardiac neural network, the heart brain, continuously process information and generate responses independent of your conscious awareness. Interoception, the perception of your body's internal state, provides essential data, not just for physical regulation, but for emotional awareness, decision-making, and sense of self. Developing embodied presence involves simple yet profound practices that strengthen your capacity to maintain awareness of physical sensations while engaging with daily activities. Noticing the feeling of your feet against the ground while walking, tracking the rhythm of your breath during conversations, sensing the subtle shifts in your posture and muscle tension as you respond to different situations. These practices don't require special conditions or dedicated time, but simply bringing conscious attention to the physical dimension of ordinary experience. As embodied presence develops, you may notice a profound shift in your sense of security and belonging in the world. Rather than seeking ground externally through others' approval, material possessions, or intellectual certainties, you discover the ground that already exists within your own embodied being, the capacity to be at home in yourself regardless of external circumstances. This inner groundedness creates the psychological safety from which authentic exploration, expression, and connection become possible. Structural integrity, the architecture of stability. Beyond embodied presence, groundedness manifests through the creation and maintenance of supportive structures that provide scaffolding for growth and development. Just as plants require appropriate trellises to reach toward sunlight while withstanding wind and rain, human development requires structures that provide both support and direction, frameworks that channel energy and attention towards meaningful purposes while creating sufficient stability to weather life's inevitable challenges. These psychological structures take many forms: daily routines that honor physical and emotional needs, boundaries that protect limited resources of time and energy, organizational systems that reduce cognitive load, decision-making frameworks that align choices with core values, and spiritual practices that connect daily experience with deeper meaning. Consider how foundational such structures are to effective functioning in any domain. The artist who maintains dedicated studio hours rather than waiting for inspiration, the parent who creates consistent bedtime routines that support children's development, the entrepreneur who establishes clear systems for managing workflow, all demonstrate how intentional structure enables rather than inhibits creative expression, nurturing connection, and innovative achievement. The neuroscience of habit formation illuminates why such structures prove so essential for psychological well-being. Your brain conserves energy by converting frequently repeated actions into automated routines that require minimal conscious attention, freeing cognitive resources for novel challenges and creative thinking. Developing structural integrity involves thoughtful creation of systems that support rather than constrain your authentic development, routines that honor your particular chronobiology rather than imposing generic schedules, organizational approaches that work with rather than against your cognitive style, boundaries that protect your specific sensitivities rather than applying universal rules. This personalized approach recognizes that effective structures must fit the unique being they support, just as different plants require different types of support to flourish. As structural integrity develops, you may notice increased capacity for both stability and flexibility, the ability to maintain core functioning amid changing circumstances while adapting specific methods as needed. Like a well-designed building that can withstand earthquakes through foundations that allow controlled movement rather than rigid resistance, psychological structures that combine firm anchoring with appropriate flexibility create resilience that mere rigidity cannot provide. A third dimension of groundedness involves skillful stewardship of the resources that sustain life and growth. Conscious attention to acquiring, conserving, and allocating physical, financial, energetic, temporal, and relational assets in ways that support flourishing across all timescales. Consider how fundamental such stewardship is to well-being in any domain. The individual who manages finances to balance current needs with future security, the organization that develops human talent while respecting work-life boundaries, the society that utilizes natural resources while preserving ecological systems, all demonstrate how sustainable approaches create enduring prosperity where exploitative methods inevitably create cycles of boom and collapse. The psychology of resource management involves several interconnected capacities, realistic assessment of available assets rather than wishful thinking or catastrophic underestimation. Recognition of genuine needs versus culturally conditioned wants, skillful prioritization based on core values rather than momentary impulses, and the ability to delay gratification when appropriate without unnecessary self-deprivation. These capacities develop not through rigid control, but through increasingly refined attention to the tangible realities that support or undermine sustainable well-being. Neuroscience research on the mechanics of self-regulation provides insight into why such stewardship often proves challenging in contemporary contexts. Your brain evolved primarily in environments where resources were limited and required immediate consumption when available, where social status directly impacted survival chances, and where most threats were immediate and physical rather than distant and abstract. These evolutionary adaptations create systematic biases toward present consumption over future security, social comparison over objective sufficiency, and tangible rewards over abstract benefits. Biases that must be consciously recognized and adjusted to develop sustainable approaches in modern circumstances. Developing resource stewardship involves creating systems that align with, rather than fighting against, these psychological tendencies, making future benefits more concrete and emotionally salient through visualization, establishing social norms that reinforce sustainable choices, creating immediate rewards for behaviors with long-term benefits, and designing environments that make wise choices easier than unwise ones. This approach works with, rather than against, human psychology, recognizing that willpower alone provides insufficient foundation for lasting change. As resource stewardship develops, you may notice a profound shift from scarcity thinking to genuine abundance consciousness. Not through magical manifestation, but through the actual abundance that emerges when resources are managed with attention to regeneration rather than mere exploitation. Like a well-tended garden that produces more each season through proper care of soil, water, and growth cycles, a well-tended life creates increasing richness through careful attention to the resources that sustain it. Perhaps the most subtle yet profound dimension of groundedness involves maintaining a sense of coherent identity and direction through time. Experiencing yourself not as a series of disconnected momentary states, but as a continuous being with meaningful past, present, and future dimensions. This temporal continuity provides the psychological foundation for commitment, responsibility, and purposeful development that transcends immediate circumstances. The psychology of temporal continuity involves several interconnected capacities: autobiographical memory that creates coherent narrative from past experiences, prospective thinking that envisions possible futures with sufficient detail to guide present actions, temporal discounting that appropriately values future outcomes relative to present ones, and narrative identity that integrates past, present, and future into meaningful continuous story. Neuroscience research on the default mode network, the interconnected brain regions active during autobiographical memory, future thinking, and self-referential processing, illuminates the neural basis for this temporal continuity. Developing temporal continuity involves practices that strengthen connection with both past and future dimensions of experience without diminishing present awareness. Reflecting on personal history to extract meaningful insights rather than ruminating unproductively. Envisioning desired futures with sufficient detail to guide current choices without escaping into fantasy. And creating rituals that connect daily actions with longer timescales. As temporal continuity develops, you may notice increased capacity for meaningful commitment. the ability to make and keep promises across time, to persist through difficulties toward valued goals, and to act in accordance with the person you aspire to become rather than merely responding to momentary impulses. Like an oak tree whose growth follows the pattern encoded in its DNA, while adapting to specific environmental conditions, a grounded human life expresses core values through changing circumstances, maintaining direction without rigid inflexibility. This approach integrates rather than opposing mindfulness and future-oriented thinking, recognizing that full presence includes awareness of temporal dimensions beyond the immediate moment. These capacities develop through both natural maturation and conscious cultivation, creating increasingly sophisticated relationship with time beyond mere present moment awareness. Unlike more primitive brain systems focused exclusively on immediate stimuli, these evolutionarily recent networks enable the distinctively human capacity to mentally travel through time, creating the neural basis for commitments that extend beyond present circumstances and impulses.